obviously the running backs have been really a really important piece to fantasy teams, okay? Derrick Henry, who's really just exploded the last 3 or 4 years, which I told everybody it was going to happen. And for some reason, when Vrabel came there, he didn't want to start him. And then it took him a second half of the season to say, you know what, I'm going to play this big guy. And then he starts to dominate. This coming year in fantasy, if you look at guys like Taylor, Henry, and all the top, McCaffrey, what running back at number 1, if you're sitting there at 1, would you draft knowing that the running back is so important when it comes to fantasy?
Traditional fantasy, I'm still taking Jonathan Taylor. I know people say, hey, it's not often that those guys repeat, as the top dog year over year. But you look at some of the other guys and they've got mileage on them. You've seen McCaffrey get injured, for I think 2 years in a row now. Henry's got some mileage. He was dealing with injury as well. We've seen Saquon battle injuries last, 2 years and then
he stinks.
Yeah.
Give me a play. Come on,
that's my Penn Stater now. So.
And I love Saquon. I actually interviewed him and his father before the draft. I love it. He's a Jet fan. I love everything. But come on, man. The guy, you never draft a running back in the top 3 unless you're ready to win. They weren't ready to win. I think there was too much pressure on the kid. And ever since then, after his first season, yes, his second season wasn't that bad, he's not the same. And too much pressure on him. He doesn't belong in New York. Send him somewhere where he can win. I've been saying Buffalo. Why isn't Buffalo opening and talking to their ex-GM or assistant GM and ex-coach or offensive coordinator? It makes a lot of sense for him to go to Buffalo.
It certainly does. And I agree, everything you said. You don't waste a pick that high on a running back, no matter how good he is and how great Saquon is or was, however you want to look at it. It's just not a smart investment. That's why, just like, looking back, in that draft, and I'll make my plug for all 22 also, I'm drafting Quentin Nelson before I draft any running back because that's more important for your overall running game. They last longer, it's more consistent play, and they're not as dependent on other positions for their success. But because running backs are dependent on other positions for their success, the Bills might say, we could plug any guy in there, let's just get our line right. We got Josh Allen, we got Diggs, drawing coverage. We don't need to, to send draft picks over to the Giants to get a Saquon for.
Do you really think Duke Johnson is the answer to their running game? Give me a break.
Of course not.
They lost enough defensive linemen. They overpaid for Von Miller. I mean, he's making a ridiculous amount of money at the age of 33. I think he's a great pass rusher, but for 6 years, $120 million, $57 million guarantee, I think it's ridiculous. I think they're going to be eating their words and they're going to be choking on it going into the season with Von Miller, especially if he gets hurt. I don't know. The AFC East might be at its weakest we've seen in a very long time. I mean, you can't bet on New England. You're not going to bet on Buffalo this year because I think they have so many holes in so many spots. Their running game is one of them. Their defensive line is definitely another. Their secondary, how healthy is White going to be coming off of an injury of that magnitude, tearing his ACL when he depends on speed to defend? I know we've seen it work, but it doesn't always work, guys. And the wide receivers, yeah, Stephon Diggs is getting older. Davis looked really, really good, but I don't bet on that. I think the AFC is absolutely winnable. Miami could win. Yes, and I'll say it again, even though I don't think it's going to happen. Yes, my Jets could actually play well in the division this year, as young as they are. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think the AFC East is so open than it's ever been. And I don't trust that Buffalo is as good as everybody says they are.
I really don't disagree. I think, you mentioned Von Miller. It's almost like it's an overcorrection for some of their recent draft picks at, on the defensive line and at defensive end in particular with, Epinesa and Greg Rousseau, who, as stout as they may be, those aren't plus pass rushers, which is what really rules the day in the NFL these days. And so I think they identified that and maybe they're saying, hey, we only have Stephon Diggs, in his prime for another year or two tops. So let's go ahead and go all in on a Von Miller move after seeing what the Rams did and going for it because they are in, a relatively weak division. I agree there's holes there. I'm just not sure that the rest of the division is there, and able to take
horrible
advantage
division.
of it.
I mean, they're young. I mean, Miami's young. The Jets are the youngest team in football. And they're only going to get younger with the draft that they have this year. Then New England. They're actually, they have veterans. Yes, they spent a lot of money last off season. They're getting younger. They're adding young players through the draft. And they don't have Tom Brady there anymore. They don't have the OK Goatee, whatever they call him. Whatever, OK Corral Goat, whatever. I don't know. And Bill Belichick, and I'm so sick and tired of hearing Robert Kraft say, "Oh, it's been 3 years and we haven't done anything." You don't have Tom Brady, buddy. That's why you haven't done anything. So I just think the division is so open. It's always been New England's division, and in the last 2 years, it's been Buffalo. And I just don't see those 4 teams to be scary. And Buffalo has the best chance of winning the division, but that's not saying much. I could see that division being won by 9 games. I can't bet on any of those teams to really succeed. Josh Allen, to me, is the best quarterback in that division right now. He is. We don't know what Zach Wilson is. He played very well in the second half. We saw that. So I want to see him, start to build. Maybe the Jets add another wide receiver, help him out. Who knows? And that offensive line's much better with adding Tomlinson and what they're going to do with Mekhi Beckham. And I think he's got something on his shoulders, and I think he's going to come out like a bandit this year and try to kill people because of what people have been saying about him. Did you see what he posted up on Twitter?
No, but if it was something about him being angry, that's a guy at that size I wouldn't want to be angry.
No, he calls himself it's not the big ticket anymore. It's something he called himself something else, like being like the big bust. That's what he called himself. He calls himself the big bust now on his Twitter account because it's like giving him the incentive to go out there and kill people this year. And I think whoever has pissed this man off, if you look at his numbers this first year, it's not a fluke what he is. I just think he hurt himself. He was coming into a new offense. I just think it was a lot. And if you look at the videos right now, the man is going to come out like a bandit this year. I really think there's no way George Font is going to beat him out on that left tackle position. I'm telling you that right now. Mark my words. The Jets in 2 weeks, 3 weeks after OTAs is going to know who was going to win that left tackle position. So, and did you hear what they're doing to Elijah Vera Tucker?
They're not moving it from guard, are they?
No, they're moving him from left guard to right guard, and they're moving Tomlinson next, on the left guard position, which is very interesting. It's only going to make Elijah Vera Tucker better. I really, the way he played last year, could you imagine him on the right side? I think they're trying to really figure out what the identity of this offensive line is going to be in the future, and I think it's smart. I think it's very interesting and intriguing to see what they do in the draft, but. I'm asking you because you're a specialist with fantasy, and I think people look at fantasy, and even though offensive line means nothing when it comes to fantasy, usually offense does.
Well, now offensive line does.
Yeah.
So
throughout this offseason, where do you see fantasy benefiting? In obviously we know the AFC is stronger, but where do you see fantasy benefiting? And, when it comes to positioning or positioning standpoint from the quarterback position, the wide receiver position, or even the running back position, what stands out being that the offseason has changed so dramatically?
I think running backs are going to hold serve. There may be 1 or 2 running backs in this class that really come out and make a statement, but you don't really have the top high-end guys, whether it's a Saquon Barkley, a Miles Sanders, or a DeAndre Swift in recent years. You don't really have that type of talent at running back. And I think with the quarterback moves, you're going to see some improvement from guys and young guys. If you're looking at Dynasty too, in particular, like Jerry Jeudy, now he finally has a competent quarterback throwing the ball that will actually see him break wide open in the middle of the field and actually throw it to him. And then with moves like Devontae Adams, I don't think you see a drop off from those guys, while you do see an increase in some of the young receivers like a Jerry Jeudy. Tyreek Hill, yes, there's a downgrade at quarterback, but again, depending on how they use him, I think they're going to get the ball in his hands. Tua be damned. And, roll with it that way. So I think, the receivers, you're going to see another uptick. You have a strong draft class coming in. I think nowadays every rookie draft class is strong at receiver just because of the way the game is played at the college level and high school, with passing being paramount. These guys are coming in polished, and, the passing game has been emphasized to them since they were, since they could, crawl and walk. So I think receivers are going to continue to get deeper. You're still going to have those high-end guys. Running back is going to hold steady. I think same with tight end. You don't see too much movement there. But really, I think receiver is deep, and that's the name of the game. So if you can get one of the few, which maybe that's not much of a change in your strategy, but if you can get one of the few running backs with volume, there's tons of receivers to choose from.
So of those receivers, the last 3 draft classes that have really created a flourish amount of wide receivers, what do you think is the best play for dynasty football purposes long term? And is there a receiver of that class that maybe looked good one year and iffy the next that maybe you're a bit concerned with?
So if you're in dynasty, right, and you don't have Jamar Chase, you missed the boat. No one's going to give him up, unless they're doing some crazy rebuild and they don't even want to keep him for that long. But I highly doubt that, right? I think same thing with Jefferson. You probably missed the boat there. One guy that I would say I'm concerned with, and Cowboys fan, whatever, but I'm a little concerned with CeeDee Lamb. I think the way Kellen Moore and the Cowboys really run that offense, they really don't think about, sometimes you hear players before plays. They're really more of a plays before players type of offense, which is kind of what you saw play out with Amari Cooper and some of the issues that they had with him, which ultimately led to that trade this past spring. And I do think they're going to bring in another weapon at receiver in the draft this year just to shore up that room. So I don't think you're going to see, just because Cooper's gone, a large amount of volume heading CeeDee Lamb's way. And I also don't think you're going to see a change in philosophy in Dallas of, hey, now let's get our top guy the ball, more often here. So I think if you have CeeDee Lamb, there's probably still a ton of people who hold him in high regard, but you could probably sell him for a pretty penny. And not that he won't be good. He's definitely startable as their wide receiver 1 or 2. But I think you can get good value for him, and I don't see his value rising a tremendous amount moving forward here.
We are talking to co-founder All 22 Premium Fantasy Football, Ray Cotto. Last question for us, Ray, is from one of our fans, Carl, the birthday boy. How do you take in account cornerbacks who don't get challenged a lot based on status in your rating system?
Got it. Right. So we don't. So in traditional IDP, right, if they're not getting challenged, they're not doing anything. They're not getting tackles. They're not getting, pass deflections. They're not getting interceptions, more often than not. So they're not worth it in those traditional leagues, right? In our league, we are taking into account all aspects, including, yes, their run defense, but also their coverage ability. So if they are locking down their receiver, snap in and snap out, pushing him to the sideline on deep routes and not allowing quarterbacks windows to throw the ball, PFF grades account for that. So they will grade highly. That's why, you'll see, before he got hurt, we talked about Tre'Davious White, right? He's a pretty positive grader here, and he probably grades higher than someone like Trayvon Diggs, who has a ton of interceptions, but also gives up a lot of catches and yards. He still makes a lot of plays, so he does have some positive grades, but you will see that the more consistent player at that position is getting, they have high marks and high grades. They're going to be ranked highly in our game. And that's reflective of real life, right? You want a corner who's not going to give up big plays. And, that's extremely valuable in the real game. And that's valuable in our game as well, as the grade will account for that, as they're graded on every play, regardless of whether they record a statistic or not.
Anyways, Ray, thank you for joining us. Tell the fans how they can find you on social media, bud.
Sure. Great. So first, you can find All 22 at all22_PFF on Twitter and Instagram. I personally am all22_Ray on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to learn more, you can go to all-22.com to get on the wait list for the All 22 platform that's coming out later this offseason.
Well, I'm reading what Jeff is saying. He's such an idiot. He's such an idiot, I swear. But anyways, Ray, we definitely want to get you on again as the season progresses. I'd like to bring on a bunch of fantasy guys. We've had so many great fantasy people on our show, and put you guys against one another and see who who would we follow when it comes to drafting players, and how would we follow, particular, understanding of which way to go when it comes to the draft. So we really appreciate you, and we'll definitely reach out to you very, very soon. Thank you for joining us.
Definitely. Thanks for having me. Definitely looking forward to it. Appreciate you guys.